Alright, so now what we have here, we have the node modules, public, SRC, and a couple other files. Now let's start with the node modules. Node modules is where you have every single dependency or dev dependency your project is going to rely on. Each and every one of them is stored in these node modules. And we're going to be talking about the dependencies and dev dependencies much more later. But then the second on the list, we have the public. Public is where you want to expose every single thing your project needs, be it the fonts, if you're going to be using static fonts, you can have it inside of the public. If you're going to be having, your sitemap, the XML files, your favicon, generally anything you want to expose to the public is going to be inside of the public folder. Next in line, we have the SRC. SRC is simply the source, right? So this is the source of your entire application. Your entire React application is inside of the SRC folder, right? Under which we have the assets where you keep your images for your project. Then we have the app.css and we have app.jsx, right? As you can see, app.css is inside of app.jsx, so that means this is meant for this, right? So if I need to style this particular component, I need to create a CSS for it, right? And then we have index.css. This is for the root application, right? For the root application, that's the index.css. Now finally, in the source folder, we have the main.jsx. This is your root directory, your root application. Whatever you're doing, always make sure to note that main.jsx is the root of your entire React.js application, right? And as you can see over here, we are creating a virtual DOM and using the index.css, which is our root CSS, and we're also getting this app.jsx and returning, or rather we're rendering it here in the main.jsx. So everything in your React app happens in this main.jsx. Every single change, every single page you're creating, all of them are being rendered inside of this main.jsx. Now you might be wondering, why is it just a single component inside of here, right? Now the next in line here, we have the git ignore. .git ignore. What this simply tells us is that whenever we want to push our project, whenever we want to make use of git in the project, anything we have inside of here will be ignored. That means they will not be sent to git to be stored. Okay, now that is why we have this. As you can see, we have this, and then not forgetting, we have node modules. Very, very important. You see, in your project, your node modules take a larger percent of your project storage, your project space, right? So the files here take little to nothing, but your node modules can take up to, depending on the scale of your project, node modules can take up to a 2 gig, or just name it. Now that is why it is being ignored, so that it does not get sent to GitHub. Alright, now you don't want to find your node modules in GitHub. It's going to be very catastrophic. Okay, so every single thing you're going to be having inside of the git ignore means that it's not to be sent to your GitHub repository. Then we have the ESLint config. Here is where configuration for ESLint is being done, and then we have index.html, right? Then we have package log, Right, this simply locks the current version of your React application. Right, and then we have package JSON. Here is where you see the scripts. You see every single information about your project. Right, so we see name, private, version, type, script. We have see the dependencies our project relies on. Currently we only have 2 dependencies, and then we see the dev dependencies. Now there's a difference between dependencies and dev dependency. Dependencies are what your project actually relies on to function even on production, right? While dev dependencies only function during development, right? So as it is, all of these only functions while I'm developing the app, but these are the core of what our application actually runs on. So there are 2 different things. When you are installing a dev dependency, it means that it's not meant to go into production. It's just meant to be at that stage of development. Then you have readme.md, right? So this is just a write-up or a documentation that tells you about your project. You can decide to, take it a step further, uh, tell people what your project is all about, the stacks involved, if there's going to be any contribution to be made, you tell people about it inside of the readme.md. .md. And then we have invite.config.jsu. So if there's any extra configuration to be done to your Vite project, you're going to have it here. Now with that, we are done. We are able to explain every single thing, every single project, every single folder and files on this particular Vite project. All right, so we move on to the next stage.